Okay, guys, so welcome or welcome back, literally, to Watch the Obsession live stream and chat. And this evening, take two, we are covering the first several days of the Delphi trial. So we are now on day 4 of the trial, and there has been a whole lot going on. Now, first, let me just tell you some things about the trial in general. The judge is not allowing any audio or video into the courtroom. It's kind of maintaining the whole secrecy vibe of the Delphi case in general that has been maintained all along. So we are relying on people who are actually, boots on the ground, who went to Delphi, Indiana, and who are watching this case live. They are taking notes. The judge is not letting them take pictures of evidence or really interact with the evidence or anything like that. They have 15 minutes, from what I understand, to sort of look at the evidence after the trial for that day is adjourned. And the judge is being very particular about, what is going on because the judge doesn't want anything to leak. There's no video and no audio. Oh, cool. Thank you. Sorry, those are my moderators just sending me something. Yeah. All kinds of things. There's really good information though coming from the people that were actually at the case. So that's like a really great thing. So welcome to those of you who found your way back here. And I'm so sorry about the last live stream. Liz, Edward, Keschik, hey guys. Yes, please hit the like and share. That would be really helpful. MK Connecticut, I hope you're still here. It's not members only, so everybody can participate in the chat. So that's a great thing. So rather than, going through the PowerPoint presentation that I made for you earlier that I slaved over, let's just get started into day 1 of the trial. What were the opening statements, the witnesses, the testimony, and the evidence presented? All right.
Absolutely. So let us set the scene for you. We're going to take you inside the courtroom to understand really day 1 of this trial. From my perspective, seemed like it was really to get the jury settled in to understanding their responsibility, the ground rules, and the law. And so, very first thing that happened when the jury came into the courtroom, Judge Frances Gall explained to them the jury instructions. And she spent quite a bit of the 15 minutes of jury instructions talking to the jurors about the fact that if they are going to find Richard Allen guilty, they must do so beyond a reasonable doubt. And she explained what that means. And she told them that the burden of proof is solely on the state of Indiana, on the prosecutor. And she also said that if the state fails to prove each element of the murder charges beyond a reasonable doubt, she told the jurors, you must find the defendant not guilty. From that point, the jury got to hear opening statements. And let's walk you through those a little bit. Here's some of the highlights. The Carroll County prosecutor, he warned the jury that they were going to see some gruesome crime scene photos. That didn't happen today, but that will take place here over the next week or so. He also told the jurors that they are going to hear from witnesses who will place Richard Allen at the crime scene, and that they're going to hear confessions from Richard Allen. And he said that the details from those confessions are details that only the killer would know. And he also told the jury that the last face the girls saw before their throats were slit was Richard Allen's face. Very poignant comments from the prosecutor directly to the jury. Then things switched over to the defense. They got a chance to give their opening statements, and that lasted a full hour, which is what the judge allotted. So the defense team spent their hour giving their statements, telling jurors that the state's investigation was, in their words, messed up from the very beginning. Richard Allen, they said, is truly innocent. And they also told the jurors there is reasonable doubt. And when they hear that, it's going to make the state's case fall apart before your very eyes. The jurors then got to hear actual testimony, starting with the victims' families. Libby German's sister and father explained how the day of the murders started like a normal day, making banana pancakes for Abby and Libby before dropping them off near the Monon High Bridge. They described what they were wearing and how they didn't show up at the time they were supposed to be picked up at the arranged time. The jury heard about the frantic all night search in the dark and repeated calls to Libby, calls that went unanswered. And in the most emotional testimony of the day, Libby's grandmother, Becky Patty, told the jury about the moment she learned her granddaughter had been found in the woods. She broke down in tears and she said, I couldn't understand why they weren't taking me to her. And then I saw the coroner's van drive by, and that's when I realized they weren't alive. The jury's also learning about the terrain around the crime.
Did you catch that? Libby's grandmother, Patty Allen, said, they'd been looking for the girls and she didn't know what happened. And she realized that they were deceased when she saw the coroner's vehicle driving by. I mean, just think about that for a moment. How absolutely devastating. I mean, there just aren't words for that. Absolutely devastating.
Crime scene. The state showed jurors huge posters that have aerial pictures of the Monon High Bridge and the surrounding area where the girls' bodies were found. They also got to see a video showing the jury what the walk looks like from the spot where Abby and Libby were dropped off all the way to the Monon High Bridge and across the bridge. That's an effort to try to put jurors at the scene of the crime rather than taking them out to that rough terrain to see it in person. So today was really, again, it was about allowing the jurors to hear from the families, to try and personalize the girls and to let the jurors try to get to know the girls. There were a lot of questions to the family members, tell us and explain about who the girls were. And there was emotion. I know one part that ripped my heart out during the testimony was hearing Becky Patty describe the very final conversation that she had with her granddaughter when Libby told her grandmother that she wanted to go out to the Monon High Bridge. She said, okay, but I want you and Abby, who was having a sleepover there that night. She said, I want you guys to have a jacket or a sweatshirt. And she told the jury the last thing she said to me was, Grandma, I'll be okay. And obviously we know things did not turn out okay. You got to hear some testimony, some emotional testimony from Abby's mom in the courtroom.
Anna Williams, and this was her only child, Bob. Abby was her only child, and she testified today that she didn't even know that Abby was going to the Monon High Bridge that day. She had seen Abby the day before when she dropped her off at Libby's house to spend the night. She paused and teared up when she was asked to describe her only child. She said she was a kind and helpful girl, that she was shy, that she wouldn't necessarily approach strangers, that she loved to read, that she was planning to play softball in the spring with Libby. So she talked about all of these things, and she talked about the fact that she was at work that Monday. She worked during the day, but then she had a second job at night where she worked in a local bar at the time, and she said back-to-back calls from Becky Patty, like 3 in a row, and then she checked her phone, and then she finally took this call, and it was Becky Patty telling her, look, the girls had gone for this walk out on the bridge, and they were supposed to meet at an arranged time, and they were not there for the pickup. And that they were concerned, that they were worried. And so I have to put my glasses on for this. Anna said that she told her boss, I don't know what these girls are up to, but it's probably not that big of a deal, thinking obviously that she would be back. And the defense asked her to describe her daughter's voice. I thought that was an interesting question. And she said it depended, her voice tone depended on who she was speaking to, but generally she said that Abby had a high-pitched voice. Her testimony, not as long as Becky Patty's, close to 30 minutes. The majority of her testimony came from questions that the state was asking her, and when it was the defense's turn, they only had a few questions, and then they were done.
And Emily, we want to point out to our viewers also, there were a lot of questions specifically by the defense team asking the family members of Libby and Abby about the girls' voices and about Libby in particular, her sister and her grandmother and her dad. There were questions about just how much Libby would stick up for other people, how she didn't mind calling someone out. Her grandmother said she was very polite and respectful, but if someone was out of line, she wasn't afraid to call them out. And the defense really kind of hit on that multiple times about saying, did she have a loud voice? Did she, was she afraid to speak up? I think getting to the point and to try to get the jury to understand that perhaps put some doubt in their minds that if these girls were being attacked by someone who had a gun, they say that there was a gun, a person with a gun, they say that that person was Richard Allen ordering them to go down a hill, that trying to, I think, to insinuate that Libby would have spoken up and she would have fought back, or she would have done something of that sort.
I think an interesting comment that Becky Patty made also was that she said that Libby had a strong intuition. And I remember that is something that in the early days after the girls' bodies were found, Libby's grandfather, Mike Patty, saying when we learned that Libby had taken that video on her cell phone, that cell phone video, that she would have known to do that if she had had an instinct or an intuition that something wasn't right, that she likely would have known to roll video on that man that she was seeing on the bridge. So when I heard that comment today that Becky Patty made, that she had a strong intuition, it took me back to those times when I talked to Mike Patty about his granddaughter and about the fact that she had taken that stunning video when that came out, that back in the day. Right. That was I mean, it kind of, it took everyone aback that wow, that these young girls, or this young girl, had the presence of mind to take this video of potentially her killer.
By putting the family members on the stand today, I think it's important to point out that jurors are from two.
Okay, so now we're going to be finding out from the testimony and the trial happenings today that, that excerpt of that 43-second video that Libby took, where we just heard guys down the hill, they heard actually a statement from the girls, and that was really haunting for a lot of people to hear. But let me just continue with this for another short time.
2 hours away. They're from Allen County.
Right.
They have not lived here for the last 7.5 years, since Abby and Libby went missing, since their bodies were found. The intense pain felt in this community is something that I think that the prosecutor wanted to introduce today to the jurors.
A little bit.
The SIM cards, right. And
it was a beautiful day, so
jurors know. Also, just the demeanor of Richard Allen in court today. We were sitting maybe 10 feet just behind Richard Allen. We were right in the first row of the courtroom, right behind the defense and Richard Allen. He was wearing the same outfit he wore on the first day of jury selection on Monday. It was a light purple shirt, khaki pants, nice belt, and shoes, not the prison jumpsuit that we've seen him wearing for most of the last 2 years since he was arrested. Of course, he started out right before the judge and right before the jury came into the courtroom. We saw him put his head down and he prayed for a moment. We saw him at one point get teary-eyed when they were talking about his family and his marriage and how it's been impacted. So we are going to be in that first row again. 13 News was given media credentials to be there for today, for tomorrow, for.
Okay, we don't care about their media credentials. So let's move on to some of the highlights from day 2 of the trial.
jurors heard from the man who discovered the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German 2017. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel was in court for day 2 and explains the new evidence presented to the jury today.
Day 2 of testimony in the Delphi murders trial was a short day. Jurors heard from only 3 witnesses, all of them asked to tell the jury about the crime scene. Jurors need to understand the terrain and geography of these woods and trails where Abby and Libby were murdered. Saturday morning, the jury got to learn about the area from Steve Mullen. He was the police chief in Delphi at the time of the murders, and now he serves as an investigator for the Carroll County prosecutor. Mullen was asked to show jurors where the victims' bodies were located, and using a large map in the courtroom, similar to this one, he pinpointed the crime scene right about here, just north of a creek that runs under the Monon High Bridge. He also pointed out landmarks near the bridge that will be crucial in testimony that jurors will hear about in the days ahead. In addition to Mullen, the jury also heard testimony from Jake Johns and Pat Brown, 2 lifelong Delphi residents who helped search for the missing girls. Johns explained right where he discovered a shirt in the creek, matching the one Libby was last seen wearing before her murder. And the most compelling testimony of the day, that came from Brown. He was the first to find the bodies of Abby and Libby. He explained where in the woods that discovery was made, and he broke down as he testified about what he saw. First, I thought they were mannequins, he said. Then, with tears running down his face, he told the jury, "We found them." The families of Abby and Libby were in court Saturday, as they have been for every hearing since Richard Allen was arrested, and some of them also cried during Brown's testimony. There will be more tears ahead for these families, as jurors will soon get to see photos from what the prosecutor referred to as a bloody and gruesome crime scene. Jurors seemed very focused and very engaged in today's testimony. The jury sent the judge 7 separate questions to ask witnesses before they left the witness stand. A sign this jury is curious and paying close attention to the details.
Now, something really interesting about this trial is the jury is really allowed to interact with the trial. They're allowed to ask questions, and the judge usually answers them. But I think it was on day 3, somebody who was watching the trial said that they actually turned, the microphone to the witness, and the witness was allowed to answer the jury questions directly.
Details. In Delphi, Bob Siegel, 13 News.
Okay, so let me just bring in some highlights from day 3. All right, here we go.
In the Delphi murders trial, forced to see in graphic detail what happened to Abby Williams and Libby German in February of 2017 along the Monon High Bridge Trail. But these jurors weren't the only ones in court. The startling crime scene images drew tears from the girls' mothers who were seated nearby. Thanks for inviting us in tonight. It's 11 o'clock. It is really hard to imagine Abby and Libby's parents and loved ones having to watch all of this unfold. Richard Allen is charged tonight with killing those 2 teen girls. Today, investigators on the stand, their testimonies taking the people in the courtroom to the wooded area where the girls' bodies were found. All day, the first investigators on the scene and a detective walked jurors through what they found in the woods near Delphi the day Abby Williams and Libby German were found. Jurors saw 117 photos, half of them extremely graphic. We want to caution you, it's hard to even hear some of these details. 13 News reporters who were in the court say some jurors and family members were visibly shaken. The pictures showed the injuries to both girls' throats, blood on both of the girls. Detectives described a very bloody area around them. Officers explained they found sticks on and around the bodies, but one testified that 3 officers decided those sticks had no evidentiary value and set them aside. Then explained that days later, he was told to go back and get the sticks. He took crime scene photos with him to identify the correct sticks. The defense has maintained, but is not allowed to bring up, that the sticks indicate the deaths were part of a ritualistic sacrifice. The defense also pushed back on how investigators collected a bullet cartridge from the scene. One prosecutor say matches a gun owned by Richard Allen. The defense asked investigators how the bullet cartridge was handled and why there are no pictures or video showing it being removed from the crime scene. They suggested to the jury that there were lapses in the chain of custody to protect the integrity of that evidence. Abby and Libby's families knew what they would see today. One of Libby's grandparents told our Bob Siegel they first saw those crime scene photos Saturday to help them prepare for today. Our Chase Howell has been talking with our legal analyst tonight. So what did she say, Chase?
Yeah, she said today we really heard from Allen's attorneys of, really building their case. And she also mentions key moments where the defense is really trying to poke holes in the prosecution's case. Inside a Carroll County courtroom Monday, jurors along with the families of Abby Williams and Libby German were shown those crime scene photos from the day the girls were found murdered. The state calling 4 witnesses to the stand, each one being cross-examined by the defense. That's when 13 News' legal analyst Katie Jackson-Lindsay says we began to see Richard Allen's team challenging the evidence presented by the prosecution, mainly by their line of questioning.
Another example would be the sticks that were found on one of the victims' bodies. They really highlighted that, one, that was a piece of evidence that was found, and two, that it wasn't originally collected. And they even got the witness to admit that they didn't collect it initially because they didn't think that it was pertinent, but someone eventually must have thought it was pertinent because they went back to get it later.
Jackson-Lindsay says the defense also entered several pieces of evidence. She says this is interesting for 2 reasons.
Now, first of all, thank you so much, Sherry, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for all of your support. I'm always so glad you're here. Now, what they were just saying, guys, isn't that amazing? So we know that there were sticks placed on top of Abby and Libby's body. And what was learned today, or yesterday rather, in court, is that initially they did not see any reason to collect those sticks as evidence. And what I heard from listening to lawyer Lee is there was some back and forth, like, aren't the sticks rough in texture? Couldn't there be some touch DNA or actual, like more scientifically verifiable DNA on those sticks? So I guess someone eventually thought better of it and went back to collect those sticks for evidence. Now, something that they haven't talked about so far is the way that they found that bullet casing that was really the main evidence that connected Richard Allen to this crime in general. So they were, doing that alternate lighting, and you have to put on goggles so you can find blood around the crime scene. And there was someone who was not wearing the goggles, and he kept seeing something glittering on the ground between Abby and Libby. And he finally said, "We got to pick it up. What is that?" And the bullet casing was apparently embedded in the dirt and beneath leaves and brush between the 2 bodies. So really, with that being the most compelling evidence they have towards Richard Allen, the way that we learned that that bullet was situated in an area where there's a lot of deer and there's deer hunting, it really does bring up a lot of questions, don't you think? What do you guys think about that?
2 reasons. One, because it's not up to the defense to build a case. That's for the prosecution to do. And 2, Jackson-Lindsay says, is because they're trying to drive their point home to the jury.
When you see the defense admitting photos, either that the state has already admitted a second time, or if they're admitting photos that the state did not admit, that really says to the jury, we need you to focus your attention on this particular angle that maybe the state didn't show you, which is letting them know that there's something else that they really want to highlight.
Reporting, Chase Howell, 13 News.
So the defense team sarcastically refers to the state's magic bullet. That'll become a central focus of this trial, and we'll certainly hear more about that in the coming days. One other important note today involves recordings from Libby's cell phone. That likely includes this audio and video. The defense team wants to set up guidelines about how this video can be shown and what investigators can say about it. They don't want it played on a loop, and they don't want witnesses to identify the words and sounds on these recordings. The defense wrote, it is up to the jury to determine what words or sounds exist on the recordings. The last officer on the witness stand today returns tomorrow for cross-examination. The judge in the case cautioned jurors that the rest of this week will be difficult.
Okay, my gosh, it's like after seeing those crime scene photos in court today, I mean, how much more difficult can it get, But man, this is just a really tough case. So let's check out the highlights of day 4. Today was a very eventful day in court, so let's take a listen to that. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. Please hit the like button and yeah, chat away. Let's see. Here we go. Day 4. Another tough day in court. Can't imagine for the families, especially.
4th day of the trial for the man who's accused of murdering Abby Williams and Libby German 7.5 years ago. Thanks for joining us tonight on WTHR Plus. This is your Delphi Debrief. Our senior investigative reporter, Bob Siegel, was in court today. And Bob, today the jury heard from witnesses who saw this so-called bridge guy. What did they learn?
Yeah, Scott, let's talk about that in a second. First thing I want everyone to know about is about this video that we saw in court today. It was the first time that we've seen this video. And let me give a little bit of...
Sorry about that. I want to interrupt him right there, but really quickly, I just want to show you in regards to Bridge Guy, okay? So this is a little slideshow I made for you guys. I just want you to see, asking the question, is Richard Allen Bridge Guy? Let's see. So is Richard Allen Bridge Guy? Stay with me here. This is interesting. Likely sensing something is off about this guy. As you know, Libby German bravely recorded the man known as Bridge Guy before the murders. The recording is 43 seconds long, although until the trial, the public strangely only heard the man say down the hill and later guys down the hill. During the trial, and this was just today, the jurors heard the video and the 2 girls can be heard saying there's no path down here, allegedly in response to Bridge Guy saying guys down the hill. The defense had filed a motion to stop prosecutors from using the recording, but they lost that motion. So, that is in the trial, obviously. On July 17th, 2017, law enforcement released a composite sketch of Bridge Guy. It's the first one there, and asked the public to look for him. They sounded really darn certain that Bridge Guy looked just like this guy here in his first composite sketch. About 2 years later, on April 22nd, 2019, law enforcement released another composite sketch that many believe looks nothing like the first, and asked the public, and this added to the public's criticism of the investigation. Now, I just learned this. I don't know if you guys knew this or not. And lawyer Lee, or the Harvard lawyer, brought this to us from the trial. There was actually 4 sketches of the Bridge Guy based on different witness testimonies. So as you probably know from looking at this, sketch 1 and 2 were released to the public, and law enforcement pleaded with the public to look for these 2 suspects depicted in the composite sketch at 2 different times, in 2017, then later they switched it up in 2019. Do you think any of these look at all alike, guys? And law enforcement did not release sketches 3 or 4 to the public. It is still unknown why that is, and I think that this is all very interesting. Ashley, welcome. Ashley Coffee says Abby had a boyfriend from what I saw, and yes, apparently that is true. And apparently there are some connections to alternative suspects through that boyfriend. I made a few videos about it. I'm going to put in the description box. I've made about 15 videos on the Delphi case with the different, kind of alternate theories and whatnot. And I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting stuff. So did you guys know that there were these 4 sketches? I had not seen these other 2 until lawyer Lee brought that to us just today. All right, back to day 4's happenings.
The day that Richard Allen was arrested, they've insisted that this crime was committed by someone referred to as Bridge Guy. And Bridge Guy is the person that Libby German captured on her cell phone on the Monon High Bridge, we believe just moments before.
Yes, Ashley, that's what I heard. The father of the boyfriend of Libby was apparently an Odinist. He has been interviewed on channels. I honestly do not remember what those channels are. If I do find them, and I'm going to look for them because good thinking, I almost forgot about that, I will post them to my community page.
the girls were murdered. So today the jury got to hear a whole lot more about Bridge Guy. For the first time, the jury got to see a video. All of us in the courtroom got to see a video 43 seconds long that Liberty captured on her phone on the day of the murders. And I can't, unfortunately, show you that video. The judge is not allowing us to record it or to show it, and she's not allowing cameras inside the courtroom. So I can't show it to you, but I can tell you about that video. So let me kind of explain what was on that video. It shows Abby and Libby on the Monon High Bridge. The camera that Libby had, the phone that she had was pointed down toward the bridge deck. We hear Libby say, "There's no path." So we actually hear Libby's voice on there. And then nearly undetectable in the background of this video, an image of a man walking behind the girls and his faint voice at the very end, something you've heard before. This afternoon, jurors heard video and audio specialist from Indiana State Police describe how we enhanced the video to isolate the still picture you're seeing of Bridge Guy, and how he also enhanced the video to hear the voice of Bridge Guy saying what all seems to sound to us like "down the hill." The jury saw that image and heard the video that we've all heard so many times before. They got to hear it for the first time today. And Scott, it's incredible. When we watched that 43-second video in court today, at first, I had no idea that is the Bridge Guy video. So it was fascinating. We got to hear two audio and visual specialists from Indiana State Police, Brian Bunner and Jeremy Chapman. They described how the video was enhanced, the video that they found on the phone, how they expedited processing of the video that investigators recovered from the cell phone that Libby had, and how they were able to brighten up the image, how they were able to rotate it, how they were able to work with the contrast and the lighting so they could capture this image of Bridge Guy in the background, who, again, when you see the video, there's only a couple frames where Bridge Guy's even visible back there. They were able to isolate that to put a picture out to the public. And then when we heard the video in the courtroom, the audio of "Down the Hill," we couldn't hear that at all. So the investigators explained how in the lab they were able to isolate background noise that was on that video so that they could get rid of that background noise and enhance and accelerate the audio on there so that we could hear "Down the Hill." And, you know, that's video, Scott, that the jury got to see today and is going to be a big part of this trial.
So, Bob, when we have seen this for 7 years, this video of Bridge Guy, you know, we see this guy walking on the Monon High Bridge. He's got his hands in his pocket. You just hear the, you know, "Down the Hill," but it's on a loop for several seconds. So you're talking about 43 seconds. Is there anything else that we see that the jury saw on this 43-second tape? Do we see anything else? Do we see the girls on this? Do we hear anything else at all?
Yeah, well, it appears to us that we see Abby Williams in the background walking towards Libby in this video. And I got to be honest, most of it is looking down at the railroad ties on that, what's described as this really scary walk across the Monon High Bridge. Most of that area is now completely sealed off. You can't walk on it now. Most of that bridge decking has been rehabilitated, at least the portion that the public's allowed on. But it's looking down at these railroad ties and really the usable portions, the portions that are going to be relevant to the jury here and that are of most interest is this little image in the background of Bridge Guy and the voice that we hear. So those are the things that state police really highlighted very early on in their investigation, and that we hear in this video today. But we've only seen a tiny little snippet of it today. We got to see that it was actually 43 seconds. And I will mention, Scott, that because this was the first time we've heard the girls' voices on there, during the lunch break, I saw Libby's mom right out here in this gazebo. There's a gazebo right behind me here on the courthouse lawn. And I wanted to clarify. I asked her, is that Libby? Is that Abby? Whose voice did you hear on there? And she said to me, yeah, that's Libby. And she said when she heard that in court, she said, I almost fell out of my chair. She said, it's been way too long since I've heard that voice.
It's got to be so hard for that family to listen and see those images. So I would imagine that everybody, not only in the courtroom, but also those of us who are watching your coverage, want to know, is bridge guy Richard Allen? Has the state been able to say, you know, in front of this jury, bridge guy is Richard Allen? And what are these witnesses that are testifying? What are they saying about the man that they saw?
Yeah, Scott, we just completed day 4 of testimony, and other than opening statements, Richard Allen's name has not been uttered by either the prosecution or the defense. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But you asked about the people who saw Bridge Guy. We heard today testimony from 3 separate women who say that they are confident that they saw Bridge Guy either on the Monon High Bridge or walking on the path leading to the bridge in really the hour or so leading up to when investigators think the murders actually happened. So I can tell you that Riley Voorhees and Breanne Wilbur, 2 of the women who testified, they're women now. They were teenagers back when this happened. They were actually classmates at Delphi High School of the 2 victims. They testified they were out on the path together on the day of the murders, and they say that they saw who was later identified as Bridge Guy. We also heard from Betsy Blair. She's a woman who frequently in 2016 and 2017 said that she went to the trails around the Monon High Bridge and the Freedom Bridge to walk and get exercise, doing 3 loops from one bridge to the other several days a week. And she was on the trails on the day of the murders, and she says that she saw Bridge Guy, and they are confident. I want to show you some of the quotes, some of the things that they directly told the jury today. Riley said, after she saw the image of Bridge Guy released by state police, she said, I can say with confidence, the person in the picture is the person that I saw out on the trail that day, actually closer to the Freedom Bridge, but not a long distance from the Monon High Bridge. Breanne Wilbur said, that is the person we passed on the trail, as she referenced the picture of Bridge Guy that the jury was seeing. And Betsy Blair said, I immediately knew when I saw that photo that was released by state police, that was the man I saw on the bridge. So that seemed to be some very positive identification as far as these 3 witnesses, not necessarily saying that they saw Richard Allen, but saying that they saw Bridge Guy. However, there's a big problem here for the defense because of the next testimony that they gave, and that testimony came during cross-examination by Jennifer Auger, one of the defense attorneys for Richard Allen. And she really pounded away on the reports, the testimony that all 3 of these women gave in the days just after the murders took place, and how they described Bridge Guy at that time. And so I want to show you some of the things that they said, those descriptions that were brought up in court today. They described Bridge Guy back then as, Riley said, a larger man. Another one of them said a tall man, and not short is what we heard from Betsy Blair. They described him, Bridge Guy, as someone in his 20s or 30s. And Riley Voorhees said early 20s or 30s. He was described as muscular. Betsy Blair said Bridge Guy was boyish and youthful in appearance. We also heard him describe Bridge Guy as someone with brown, poofy hair by these women who say that they passed him and they saw him on the trails on the days of the murder. Why is that such a big problem? Well, because those descriptions offered in court today by these three witnesses of Bridge Guy don't match the defendant sitting at the defense table, the man who is accused of these crimes. Richard Allen, by most accounts, would be described as short. He was in his mid-40s at the time that the murders took place, not particularly muscular, wouldn't describe him that way. So the problem there is you have state police who are going to be testifying to this jury that Bridge Guy is the guy who committed these murders. Then you've got the jury having to weigh that with these three witnesses that the jury just heard from saying, we saw Bridge Guy and he looked like this, this, and this, and the things they're describing do not match the man that jurors are looking at throughout this trial and who's accused of this crime. So that is potentially a big misstep by the state today. And actually, by putting these witnesses on the stand, there was another potential misstep that came up today, and that is the state successfully they argued to try to get the sketches of the suspect that were released immediately after the murders. The state does not want the jury to see those sketches because they say it could confuse the jury. Well, today on the stand, while the state had one of the witnesses there, Betsy, brought up these sketches and talked about the fact that the description that she offered, Betsy Blair said the reason that she was giving these descriptions was to state police investigators to help them create the sketches. At that point, Brad Rosie, one of the defense attorneys, his eyes lit up. They got real wide. And he looked over at the other defense counsel. And at the end of the hearing, he mentioned to the judge, he said, look, now this has come up in court. This has been part of the testimony brought on by one of the state's witnesses about these sketches. And he said to the judge, this is something we are going to want to revisit. So by putting Betsy Blair on the stand and having her bring up these sketches, that opens the door for evidence to be introduced that the state does not want to be introduced. So again, I think the evidence from these three witnesses.
Okay, so again, this is where this evidence about these different sketches, these 4 different sketches, which I don't think the public knew about before. I'm going to be honest, I didn't know about it before. And a lot of you said you didn't know about it before. It was the state's testimony that allowed the defense to bring in the evidence that there were actually 4 composite sketches. Again, here, as I'm telling you, only 2 of them were released to the public, giving us the instructions, go find this guy. And these other 2 were not released.
It's so interesting. As you were talking, we did put up both of those sketches, so our viewers got a chance to see how different these 2 sketches look like that state police put out. Let me ask you about Richard Allen. While he was hearing this testimony from these 3 witnesses, what, if any, reaction did Richard Allen have as he was listening to these witnesses and hearing this testimony discussed?
Let's be totally transparent. So there are some days, Scott, where 13 News has one of 12 media passes to be in the courtroom. And on those days, I'm able to sit right in the first row, often in a seat that's right behind Richard Allen, maybe 10 feet away from him. So I get a really good view of him. Today, I didn't have one of those passes. My producer, Susan Batt, was actually in line outside the courthouse at 12:30 this morning to secure a seat to make sure that we could be somewhere in the courtroom today and to make sure that we could get a seat. So I was seated further back. I did not have as close a view of Richard Allen today. I can tell you throughout the trial, though, he has been taking notes frequently. He's also been talking with his defense counsel a fair amount, but as far as his exact reaction during the testimony this afternoon, I did not have a chance to see that.
Okay, Bob, thanks so much for answering that. That gives our viewers, I think, also an idea of the steps that our TV station is taking every day to make sure that we have representation inside to watch court and to do what you and Emily have been doing over these first 4 days. So we appreciate the whole team and their effort to make sure that we're in there. So let me talk about the pictures of the evidence that was collected at the scene. You know, we saw a lot of that yesterday in terms of inside the court.
Yes.
Did we get more information about that evidence today?
We did not necessarily get more information about the evidence, but the jury did hear some really interesting details about how that evidence is collected. The state wants to really paint a picture for the jury that investigators that were out at the crime scene were very thorough and methodical in how they did their jobs. So today we heard more testimony from one of the witnesses who testified late yesterday afternoon, Brian Olahai. He is a crime scene investigator.
All right, let me pause for a moment because Ashley, I just found whoops. Sorry about that. I just found, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. I just found Grizzly True Crime, I guess, made a video at some point saying, is Ron Logan bridge guy? So let me bring that here into the stream. So is this the picture you're talking about, Ashley? So there's Ron Logan on our right, and there is Bridge. Oh my word. Shit. I forgot about that. Look at that with like the red flannel shirt hanging out from the bottom of the blue jacket. And I mean, the hat looks identical. Wow. Is that what you were talking about, Ashley? Let's see, are there more? Let's see if there's more here. Let me just go through her video here. And again, this is Grizzly True Crime. So here she's showing a close-up of Ron Logan's clothing, looking very bridge guy-esque. Let's see here. Sorry, I don't know what's in this video. I don't think I've ever seen her video here. And then they show Keegan Kline as compared to Bridge Guy, who also looks like he could possibly be Bridge Guy, really, I think. Okay, so I think they show the gate here. Okay, so they're going to show the gate here. So let's take a look at that. Again, this is Grizzly True Crime.
Different accessories, just to kind of see, and like I said, I'm zigzagging, trying to get different.
And the guest here is the creator of Monsters Under My Bed, or the Mob Crew.
Different looks, just to see if the mustache kind of fades into the pixels. But no, it is.
No.
You can clearly see it.
Oh.
Okay, now this one is unpixelated because I think I kind of forgot to mention, but so one of the things I realized early on, once I got the iPhone 5, is after doing these reenactments, is I'm like, looking back on it, I'm like, okay, well, my quality is fine. Why is the video so compressed? And obviously we'll get into that in a minute. But so what I had to do to recreate that is, so all these previous ones that we were watching, I ran a pixelation filter, which kind of adds these little blocks, you know, to make it a little, croppy or blurry to recreate that BG clip. But here is me toned down the pixelation. And this is how, in my opinion, how I think he approached the girls. So if you want to play the clip, and this is me with the gun under the jacket,
Oh, that's
and I'm about to brandish it. And to me, I think this is what's about to happen.
So trigger warning for anyone, especially if anyone's had type of incidents, if someone pulled a gun on you or you've got PTSD.
Okay, so I'm not sure. This is getting to the more irrelevance here. I just want to see Ron Logan. All right, Ron Logan. Let's see. Is that, or is that him? Jesus. Oh, wait, here. This is, okay, so the original one we were looking at is Ron Logan next to Bridge Guy. So there we go. I mean, definitely the clothing is the same. The hat to me really kind of grabs me. And also that red flannel hanging out from under his jacket. And that's him. Interesting. All right, I'm going to bring it back to the end of the day 4 highlights.
Who was kind of in charge of the crime scene right after the girls were found murdered. He testified in this morning to explain how all of the evidence was collected. And the jury actually got to see, let me see here, it was 49 different bags, some of them very small, some of them big bags. These were bags that contained the evidence that they collected both at the crime scene in an area called Ground Zero, right around where the girls' bodies were found, as well as evidence that was collected during the autopsies performed on Abby and Libby. Those were performed at a hospital in Terre Haute. And he showed these bags, and they contain clothes and shoes, swabs of blood. Libby's cell phone was in one of the bags. The bullet cartridge that is going to play a major role in this trial that was found between the girls' bodies, that was in one of the bags. There were fibers collected from the girls' fingernails. That's some of the types of evidence that was collected at the crime scene. And by showing these bags to the jury, they were trying to explain how all of this evidence was collected, that it was very secure. I thought it was interesting. I personally was interested in seeing the evidence inside the bags. I'm guessing maybe some of the jurors were interested in seeing that as well. We did get to see photographs of that evidence yesterday. Today, it was just the brown paper bags. They were labeled, and it had the chain of custody on there again. It was really the state's way of trying to help the jurors understand the great lengths that crime scene investigators go to secure evidence and to make sure that it is safe and that the integrity of the evidence is maintained in case it needs to be tested, in case it needs to come up at a later time as evidence that needs to be looked at more closely for a trial like this.
Hey, yeah, it's good that you're talking to our viewers about that chain of custody. While you were talking, we did see some video of the river that was near what the authorities are calling, Ground Zero, where the bodies were found. I'm interested in hearing from you about the clothing that was gathered at Ground Zero, and the fact that one of the girls not wearing any clothes, the other girl wearing the other girl's clothes. Is that what was found and talked about during the trial today?
Yeah, we did hear about how Abby Williams was wearing Libby German's sweatshirt and pants. And there was an interesting question that was submitted by one of the jurors asking the crime scene investigators, was the ground under Abby Williams, did it appear that there was a disturbance there or that the leaves had been brushed away to suggest that perhaps that switch of clothing might have taken place right there at the crime scene by whoever might have committed the murders? We were told by the investigators it did not appear that there was a disturbance like that. So I thought that was really interesting. Scott, you mentioned about just how much evidence has been collected, and that means that these jurors, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, there's the risk that they're being overwhelmed with exhibits because.
Okay, so I was able to open that email that Ashley wanted me to show. That is a comparison of Ron Logan next to Bridge Guy, because that's not what I just showed you. Sorry about that. Let's see, where can I magnify it? Here we go. So there we go. So there is Ron Logan walking his dog next to Bridge Guy. And man, it's just like, yeah, the way he carries himself is, and again, there's that hat. Head down, hands in pocket. Look at that gait with that, what would be his right foot in front of the left. That's pretty crazy. Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. Thank you. What do you guys think about that? Oh, that's pretty crazy. Thank you, Ashley.
Because every single one of the photographs, every one of the reports, the CVs, the resumes of each of the experts going up to talk to the jurors. There's so much evidence, and every bit of it is pretty much entered as exhibits that the jury can refer to later. And so they are just collecting one piece after another, all these exhibits that are, they call it being published. By publishing it, it's accepted by the court, and then it's published, and it goes into a binder, a folder that these jurors can refer back to over and over again throughout the trial. They're not allowed to take any of those exhibits out of the courtroom with them. They all have to stay in the court every day at the end of the day when they leave the court, but then it's there waiting for them when they come back, and it will be available to them in their deliberations. And speaking of exhibits, today there was an interesting development in this case that didn't happen here in Delphi. It actually happened a couple hours away over in Fort Wayne. If you recall, over the summer, there were some pretrial hearings, and there was tons of exhibits that was entered during those hearings. The judge basically had told us we requested to see those exhibits, and the judge said, no, not going to let you see them until after the trial's over. We pushed back, and the judge finally allowed access to those. That was today over in Fort Wayne, and our Emily Longnecker went to Fort Wayne, went to the Allen County Courthouse to look through all these exhibits, and I'd like to check in right now with Emily to find out what was actually in those exhibits. Emily?
Yeah, Bob, during those pretrial hearings in July and August, we saw both the state and the defense enter into the record lots of exhibits. And today we got a chance to look at some of those exhibits. They were here in Allen County. We were not allowed to video any of them or take pictures. All we had, like during the trial, our paper and our pen to copy down, in some cases, word for word, exactly what we were seeing. The most notable pretrial exhibit today came from the state. It showed a form the state says Richard Allen filled out requesting an interview with the Westville prison warden, John Gallipo. Now, that form was dated March 5th, 2023. On it, 2 sentences the state says Richard Allen wrote, quote, "I am ready to officially confess for killing Abby and Libby. I hope I get the opportunity to tell the families I'm sorry." Now, you'll remember that the defense has pushed back on 60 plus alleged confessions that the state says Allen has made during his time in prison. The defense has said that Allen made those alleged confessions during mental duress caused by the solitary confinement conditions that he was living in. Judge Gall ruled in late August after those pretrial hearings that the jury would be able to hear those alleged confessions during trial. So we do expect that this paper that we saw today here from the pretrial exhibits, that the jury will likely see that. And we looked at several other exhibits. There were thousands and thousands of pages. We couldn't get through them all, but we spent a good part of the day going through them. Here's what we did not see, which we heard about during the pretrial hearings, and we thought we might see them today when we got to view these exhibits, but we did not see them. We did not see autopsy reports for Abby Williams and Libby German. We did not see emails from Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter. with updates. They included updates to the FBI in the early days of the investigation. We did not see those emails that were talked about during the pretrial hearings. We also didn't see a report from Steve Mullins, an investigator for the state who was Delphi's police chief at the time of the murders. We learned in pretrial hearings that that report detailed interactions that Mullins had with a possible suspect. Now, at the time, the state objected to that report being entered into the record, but it was entered, noting their objection. We also saw several exhibits dealing with Odinism, a Norse pagan religion. The defense has said that they believe that Abby and Libby were killed in a ritualistic killing as part of an Odinistic ritual killing, and they have deposed several people that they believe are potential suspects that could have been involved. We read through some of those depositions today. Again, hundreds and hundreds of pages. We could not get through them all. Now, keep in mind that Judge Gull has ruled that the jury will not get a chance to hear about that defense theory or hear about those alternate suspects. That ruling came out also in August. But again, I think the most notable exhibit that we saw today was that piece of paper that the state says Richard Allen signed to the prison warden, saying that he was ready to confess to the killings of Abby and Libby and apologize to their families. Bob?
Thanks a lot, Emily. So we should point out, Judge Gull has ruled that the Odinism information and the evidence and the witnesses surrounding that, as far as a third-party perpetrator, that the jury would not be able to hear that, but the defense will get another chance during the trial to try to convince the judge to allow them to present that to the jury in what's called an offer of proof. So that is still yet to come. Scott, you had mentioned earlier, what has the jury heard so far about Richard Allen? Well, you know, the jury heard during opening statements, the state say that that is the individual who is responsible for the deaths of Abby and Libby. Since then, through 4 days of testimony, not a word about Richard Allen, and that's not by mistake. You know, they are trying to lay the groundwork, very systematically working their way up for the jury to help them understand the crime scene, the evidence that was collected, the terrain, the geography, and then moving their way into people who are at the scene, who can identify Bridge Guy, that we heard that today. And so we expect in the next several days, we will transition from the general details about the crime scene and Bridge Guy to the state trying to help the jury to understand why they believe that Richard Allen is Bridge Guy and why he is responsible. And you just heard Emily talking about these confessions. That's going to be coming up as well, and we expect that is going to be a central part of this trial. So lots more evidence the state will present coming up this week. We are back tomorrow in the.
Okay, guys, so that's it. So those are all of the, salient details through, day 4 of the trial. And I am going to just kind of end it there because we started late due to my little, I don't know what's going on, but let me read a few comments. Let's see. Yeah. So I think a lot of people in chat here, have some doubt about Richard Allen's guilt. And I think, just so far in this trial, given the information that has come up, the witness testimonies, the evidence that's been presented that we have learned about, there already are a lot of questions raised about his guilt. So we will definitely be talking more about the Delphi case, but I think I'm just going to leave it at that for now, because it is getting late. And I thank you guys for being here. I'm going to be doing a couple more live streams this week, so be looking for them. I'll be doing a Watts live stream on Saturday night for those of you who are interested. And we will also be talking more about the Delphi case. So thank you so much, moderators, subscribers, members, people just checking us out. Please click like and subscribe. And I hope that we see you again soon.